Now we're going to learn how to access and use the chronograph function in our TAG Heuer AQUARACER. We're going to learn how to read the time on our dial, and then we'll learn how to time simple times, intermediate times, and then how to measure two close times. First thing we'll need to do is understand how the watch will report times to us. It's going to use the hour hand to tell us the hours, the minute hand to tell us the minutes, the second hand to tell us the seconds, and then on the two counters on the bottom will tell us tenths of a second, and more precisely hundredths of a second. Now the first thing we need to do is to access the chronograph. And the watch essentially has two modes. There is a normal time mode, and then there is the chronograph mode. And you switch between the two by pressing in one time the chronograph. So I'm going to press it one time, and you can see now that all of my dials, all of my hands went and zeroed out. So they're all in the zero position, essentially ready to start timing. And I can swap back and forth by, again, just clicking my crown here, and it goes back to normal watch function. So again, to access the chronograph, I press once, and it should go all to zero. And to go back to my watch, I just press it again, and it's now displaying the time. Now we're going to learn how to measure a simple event. The first thing we'll need to do is access the watch's chronograph, and we'll do that by pressing one time on the crown. You'll see that all the hands have now set themselves to zero, and they're prepared and ready to start measuring time. If you find that the hands do not go to zero, and zero is all the zero hands appear at zero, and then also on the counters they're at zero and on the bottom, then you force them to go to zero by pressing the B button. But here on this watch, they've all set themselves to zero, so now we're ready to start measuring time. And the way you trigger the watch to start measuring time is by pressing the A button, and you'll press it one time. And after pressing, my second hand will start to move around, and if minutes go by, my minutes will go around, and if hours go by, the hour hand will eventually start to move around. But we're not going to wait that long, and I'm going to stop it right now by simply hitting on the A button. And that has stopped it at the 20-second mark. And then I can see that I also have measurements now. That is, the watch has now recorded also the fractions of a second. And if I look at my dials, I have a 4 and a 3. So together that's 43 100ths of a second. So my whole time is 20 seconds and 43 100ths of a second. And I can continue on adding time to this by pressing on the A button again, and that will start up exactly where it's left off. And it will start from the 20 seconds and continue on. And then again, I can stop at any time and get a reading. And here we've stopped at 30 seconds and 81 100ths of a second. And that's how you do a simple time. And before I get out of the chronograph mode and go back into normal watch display, what I'm going to want to do is zero this information out. And I'm going to zero it out or clear it out by hitting the B button down here one time. And my second hand and all my fractions will go down to zero. And then I just simply press my crown, and I'm back in normal watch mode and ready to go. Now we're going to learn how to measure intermediate times during an event. So here, again, we're going to go in, set the watch into chronograph mode, and we're going to access our chronograph by pressing one time on the crown. We're going to make sure that all of our dials are set to zero. If they have not gone to zero, we're going to press on the B button. And now we're going to set our timer. And we're going to start our timer by pressing on the A button one time. Now, as our timer or as our event is occurring, and we want to take intermediate times, but do not want the clock to stop. Unlike the first or simple timing where the clock is stopped. Here we want the time to actually continue on, but we want to get an accurate an accurate measure of the time as if we're clocking a lap or the first lap. And the way we're going to do that is by using the B button. So now that the timer is, the watch is timing as we speak, we're going to get a reading on an instant by clicking on this B button one time. So I've just hit the B button, and I have a reading now of no hours and no minutes, 45 seconds, and 74 100ths of a second. So I have a reading of 45 seconds and 74 100ths of a second. But the important difference is, unlike stopping at the A button, I've stopped at the B button. And what that means is, in the background, the clock is still rolling. So my timer is still going on while I have this stopped, while I took that quick measurement. And I'm going to access the full time again by clicking again on this B button. So now we can see that a full minute has gone by, and I'm at the 40-45 second mark. And so you can see that I have a cumulative amount of time. It did not stop measuring time when I clicked on the B button earlier. It continued in the background. We just took a quick snapshot of the time, and meanwhile it kept on going. And then we accessed it again by clicking on this B button once more. And then when we want to stop and get a final time, we're going to hit the A button. Now we got our final total time of 2 minutes, 13 seconds, and 83 hundredths of a second. And that is our total time. And before we go back into time mode, it's good practice to set your chronograph to zero, and press in our crown, and we're back in time mode. And finally, we're going to learn how to measure two close times. The first thing we'll need to do, as always, is access our chronograph, and we do that by pressing one time on the crown. We're going to confirm that all of our dials have set themselves to zero. If not, we will press the B button or the bottom button one time, and that will set everything to zero. And now we're ready. When our event starts, we'll press the A button to start measuring time. And we'll do that now. So as our timer is timing, I'll quickly explain what we're going to do in a theoretical measurement of a race of two people. As the people are racing by and the first racer crosses the finish line, we're going to press the B button. That will record our time at that moment. But behind the scenes, the watch is still measuring time. And then when the second racer comes by, we will then hit the A button. Now that will record the time, but will not display it, because the watch will wait for us to note the time of the first racer, and then we will, after we've recorded the time of the second, we can view that time by hitting B again. Essentially what that does is it allows us to click quickly and then click quickly for the second one, but not lose the reading of the first one. Okay? So now theoretically, let's say that our runner or our racer the first one has crossed the line. We'll now click B one time. Here's our reading. Now our second runner is coming by. I'll click A. Now I've recorded that, but we don't see it yet because we're still looking at runner A's time. And runner A's time is 1 minute, 8 seconds, and 96 100ths of a second. So now that we've recorded A, we can now take a look at what the second runner and what their time was, and we'll do that by clicking on the B button. So that second timer had a little bit more time, and their time was 1 minute, 15 seconds, and 11 100ths of a second. So we could rapid fire click both of these. The watch will display the time of the first runner and keep in memory the time of the second runner. And when we're ready to look at that time of the second runner, we'll click the B button again. It'll display that one, and then we can compare. And then when we're done, as always, we will set our timers to 0 and be ready for the next event. And if there is no next event, we can go back to our watch by pressing 1 time on the crown.